Everybody have a seat. We're going to go ahead and get started. I will now call to order the meeting of the Omaha Planning Board. The Planning Board members that are here today are Sidney Franklin, Jeff Moore, Patrick Morse, Michael Pate, Jorge Sotolongo, Dave Rosacker, Vice Chair, and I am Greg Rosenbaum, Chairman. Members of the city staff that are in attendance today are Dave Panslaw, Planning Director, Eric England, Assistant Planning Director, Mike Carter, Current Planning Manager, Robert LaRocco, Planning Board Administrator, Jennifer Taylor of the City Law Department, and Debbie Hightower is our recording secretary. Our rules of procedure are as follows. Notice of this hearing has been published. Copies of today's agenda are located on a table in front of us. You are welcome to come down and pick one up. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases have been recommended for layover, have already been heard or are perceived by the Planning Board to be non-controversial. Therefore, will be read and voted on without the opportunity for your testimony. If you wish to testify, you may remove the case from the consent agenda. When each consent case is read, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will be removed. This case will then be heard in the order in which it appears on the regular agenda after we go through the consent cases. When the case is heard, you will have the opportunity to come to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on the regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant. After the applicant states their case, we will hear from the proponents, and then we will hear from the opponents. After both sides are heard, the public hearing will be closed, and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member requests additional information. When at the podium, please clearly state your name, address, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and courtesy to others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We request that large groups select a spokesperson to represent that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has been previously said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and with respect. In that regard, please remain silent while seated, and please turn off your cell phones. Our decision to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decision made here today on conditional use permits are final and not forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the Law Department, all communications to board members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the Planning Department so that they are made a part of the public record. The department will then transmit all that information to the board as well as to the rest of the public. A current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act can be found in a white binder in this room. Before I get started with the consent cases, I want to announce that agenda item number 18 we'll hear that right after agenda items number 1 and 2. Those are administrative only. Once we open the public meeting, we're going to start off with agenda item number 18. And I'll get started with the consent cases. Agenda item number 3, case C8-21-258, C7-21-259, C10-21-264. Applicant Michael Murphy, Fiserv, Inc. It is on for approval. Request approval of a large project special use permit to allow development over 10 acres in size, along with a conditional use permit to allow warehousing and distribution limited in the CC district, and approval of the ACI 3 overlay district. This was laid over from our October meeting. Location 10910 Mill Valley Road. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 4, case C11-21-313, applicant Gregorio Pacheco Guerrero, Uptown Properties, LLC. It is on for approval. Request approval of a planned unit redevelopment overlay district. This was laid over from our November meeting. Location northwest of 30th Avenue and Mason Street. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Moving on, agenda item number 9, case C10-16-287, C12-21-337. Applicant Jasper Stone, 192nd and Dodge LLC. It is on for approval. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Avenue 1 replat to a minor plat inside city limits with rezoning from AG, DR, and MU to DR and MU, along with approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Avenue 1. Portions of the property are located within an ACI 4 overlay district. Location southeast of 188th and Burke Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, it will be removed. Agenda item number 9. Agenda item number 10, case C10-14-104, C12-14-105. Applicant Anchor Point Development, LLC. It is on for approval. Request final plat approval of Anchor Point, lots 303 through 307, outlots U and V, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and MU. Location northwest of 168 Nida Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 11, case C12-21-323, applicant CNI Land 1 LLC, care of Jeff Silver. It is on for approval. Request preliminary and final plat approval of West Farm Replat 9, a minor plat inside city limits. Location southwest of 145th and Davenport Street. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Agenda item number 12, case C3-21-324, C10-21-325, C12-21-326. Applicant Drew Snyder, Woodsonia Acquisitions, LLC. It is on for layover. Request preliminary plat approval of The Haven, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and R4, along with a request for a variance to the present development zone. Portions of the property are located within the flood fringe and floodway overlay district. Location southwest of 216th and Fort. Anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Agenda item number 13, case C10-21-327. Applicant Monica Dempsey. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from DR and R4 to DR and R4. Location southeast of 189th Street and Bedford Ave. Anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Agenda item number 14, case C10-21-328, C7-21-329. Applicant Chip James, Lockwood Development. It is on for approval. Request approval of a parking adjustment for a mixed-use development, section 55-736, along with approval of the major commercial corridor overlay district. Location southwest of 90th and Maple. Anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Agenda item number 15, case C10-21-330, applicant Sam Manzito, Inc. It is on for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Antler View. Location northwest of 191st and Bedford Aves. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 16, case C10-21-331, C10-21-340. Applicant 180 Maple LLC. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from MU to R7 with approval of the major commercial corridor overlay district. Location northwest of Big Elk Parkway and Bedford Ave. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 19, case C11-19-181. Applicant, Access Bank. It is on for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to the Plan Unit Redevelopment Overlay District. Location, 6405 Center Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 20, case C8-21-336, C10-21-339. Applicant, Jason Tidbloom, Tidbloom Enterprises, LLC. It is on for layover. Request approval of a special use permit to allow construction, sales, and services in the CC District, along with approval of the major commercial corridor overlay district. Location, 8838 Maple Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 21, case C8-21-233. Applicant Eugene Olson, Westwood Solutions, LLC. It is on for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to the large project special use permit to allow communication services in the GI District. Location, northwest of State Street and Blair High Road. And I'm going to request that this be removed from the consent agenda. And finally, agenda item number 22, case C7-21-338. Applicant, All Holy Spirit Greek Orthodox Church. It is on for approval. Request approval of a conditional use permit to allow religious assembly in a R5 urban family residential district with a waiver of section 55206 height for a 55-foot tall church and steeple. Location, 405 South 193rd Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay. Seeing none from the board, do we have a motion for the consent items that are on for approval?
I motion to approve agenda items number 3, 4, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 19, and 22.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Do we have a motion for the consent items that are on for layover?
Motion to lay over case numbers 12 and 20.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, those cases that were left on consent, no further action will be taken today. You are welcome to stay, you are welcome to leave, and we'll continue on with the regular agenda. The first two items are administrative only, therefore there will not be an opportunity for any public testimony. Agenda item number 1, case C10-18-219, C12-18-220. Applicant Vistantia 3 LLC. Request final plat approval of Vistantia lots 524 through 680, outlots M through U, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and R4. Location, northeast of 216th and 4th Street. Eric.
Yeah, so this preliminary plat for this case was heard before the July Planning Board meeting and approved by City Council on October 26. There are 157 single-family residential lots and 9 outlots in this development. The final plat is consistent with the approved preliminary plat. There are a few small modifications as well as including a sidewalk connection to 216th Street. Applicant will need to coordinate with city staff on the final layout for that, as well as providing final street names on the final plat Mylars, as well as working out some of the details regarding stormwater outlets into the dam site. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R4. Approval of the final plat subject to addressing the 5 conditions in the recommendation report prior to forwarding to City Council.
Any Questions, comments from the board? Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of the final plat subject to addressing, approval of the final plat subject to addressing the 5 conditions outlined in the recommendation report, approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R4.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Okay, Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sodolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin.
yes,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 2, case C10-21-205, C12-21-206. Applicant Avante LLC requests final plat approval of Avante, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and R4. Location, Northwest 195th and Fort. Eric.
Yeah, so the preliminary plat of Avante was before the planning board on the August meeting, August 4th, and approved by city council on October 25th. There are 272 single-family residential lots and 5 outlots. The proposed final plat layout is fully consistent with the approved preliminary plat and is compliant with the master plan. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R4. Approval of the final plat subject to addressing the 4 conditions in the recommendation report prior to forwarding to city council.
Any comments or questions from the board? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve rezoning from AG to DR and R4, and approval of final plat subject to addressing the 4 conditions of the staff report prior to forwarding to the city council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sodolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin.
yes,
Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 7-0.
Okay, we're going to change here. We're going to start off with agenda item number 18, and then we'll go back to the regular order. Agenda item number 18, case C11-21-335. Applicant Stephen Elkin, City Land Venture LLC, request approval of a planned unit redevelopment overlay district. Location, southeast of 6th and Woolworth Streets. May we hear from the applicant, please?
My name is Kyle Hazy with E&A Consulting Group, 10909 Mill Valley Road, representing the applicant along with myself. The applicant is in the audience today to answer any questions I may not be able to do. The property that we are looking at is on the southeast corner of 6th and Woolworth, as highlighted here on the exhibit. It is currently vacant and is overgrown with trees and tends to collect trash within those trees and vegetation. It is surrounded by R7 zoning on all 4 sides, residential on the north, east, and south sides, and has a park to the west. We are planning to keep the R7 zoning, which is currently has, but apply a PUR overlay. The project itself includes 24 units within 2 buildings, 12 units within each building. It'll also include improvements to 5th Street, 6th Street, and Woolworth to include on-street parking to complement the on-street parking. This plan as a whole provides over 2 stalls per unit for the buildings. There are some elevations of the proposed units. The residence will be 2 stories with a pitch roof. The homes will step down the hill with the majority addressing the street with their front doors to make it more welcoming and neighborhood feel. We did reach out to the Neighbors Association and the neighbors through emails and letters. We have not heard back from any of them at this time. With that, I'll make myself available for any questions you may have.
Steve Elkin, do I give an address as well
please.
too? 999 South Logan Street, Suite 300, Denver, Colorado. I first and foremost want to thank everybody for moving this agenda. I unfortunately have an emergency. I have to hop on a plane today, get down to Florida for my mother, so thanks on that. We tried to incorporate a lot of details that are also in the neighborhood. We kind of kept a lot of the roof lines similar to the roof lines in there. We looked at window sizing, and material mixes from the neighborhood as well too. And the original plan had more of a side-loaded appearance to the streets, and we changed it. So now all the front doors are facing the streets, similar to, you know, what you see on 10th, what you see on Pacific, and some of those areas as well too. And we think it complements and hopefully creates a synergy for a little bit more rehabilitation in the area as well as some new construction in the area. And I'm here again to answer any questions that either Kyle can answer as well too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any comments or questions from the board? Eric?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. Applicant presented very thorough. There'll just be a final few details that the applicant will need to coordinate with city staff before sending final PUR plans to city council. You know, working on the public street improvements, the bump outs, the on-street parking, any dedication of right-of-way that's needed. Staff recommends approval of the PUR overlay district subject to submittal of final acceptable plans prior to city council.
Okay, I just wanted to make one comment. And sometimes when we're here and we don't ask questions or anything, we've been given a packet back last week. We've read all the material. We've had pre-meeting upstairs where we discuss everything, go over all the cases. So a lot of our questions have been asked and answered. So I just wanted to make that for the general public so you know how the procedure goes. And if we do have questions, we'll make sure to ask you. Do we have a motion from the board?
Motion to approve the PUR planned unit redevelopment overlay district, subject to the submittal of acceptable final PUR plans prior to forwarding the request to city council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Yes.
Solongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Thank you.
Hope you catch your plane. We'll continue on with agenda item. Say what? I mean.
I wish it was rectified.
Yeah. We'll continue on with agenda item number 5, case C3-21-316. Applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request approval of the Maverick Landing TIF redevelopment project plan. Location 3321 South 72nd Street. Don, you're on.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you. This site is the site of the former Ramada Inn Conference Center and its associated Cocoa Keys Water Park. It's been vacant for a couple of years now. It's this large, sprawling complex here that presently occupies the site. It's been vacant. The site will be cleared of all these improvements, being subdivided into 6 parcels, and the TIF parcel will be lot 4 only. A new 4-story hotel with about 85 guest rooms will be constructed. It's planned to be a Fairfield Inn and Suites hotel. Parking will consist of a surface parking lot. Let me go to a site plan maybe. Okay. I said the overall site's being subdivided into 6 parcels. The other parcels are future development sites. This is the proposed TIF-funded assisted hotel site on lot 4. Surface parking around the building will provide about 81 parking stalls. 4-story hotel with 85 guest rooms. The developer is MH Ozone 2 LLC. That's managed by Dan Merrick, who is responsible for a number of other hotels within the Omaha area. Total project investment in the site is $11,140,316. They're requesting $2 million in TIF program support. Project meets the required criteria of the city's TIF program. It's been reviewed and approved by the TIF committee. It's an appropriate land use for the location. It also takes care of what's currently kind of a unused eyesore of the site, so that's good for the community as well. And here's some elevations. We ask for your approval.
Don, did you mention that 70th Street between Haskell and Grover is
yes.
part of this project and
Good
paid
point.
for?
Yeah, there's a variety of public improvements that will be constructed as part of this project, but one of the main ones is a new 70th Street connection that's being constructed alongside the hotel, north-south, one block segment of street that is a real nice addition for connectivity in the area.
Okay,
Thank you.
Don. Any other proponents wishing to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brent Beller, 1140 West Center Road. Don, as always, did a fabulous job. The only thing I wanted to touch on in connection with this project is just the phasing aspect of this entire development. So, yes, this is the former Ramada Cocoa Keys, and thankfully we're during school hours, so there's not kids here to oppose me on taking down the water park. But it's all coming down. We're going to scrape it. I mean, the uses that we're going to see here is obviously the hotel that's before you today, but there's going to be an office building on Lot 5, and then retail and retail uses, restaurants that are going to front 72nd Street. Obviously, this is a very important piece of real estate in our city in that it's the 72nd right off the interstate. Eventually, Lot 6 will be apartments. We suspect, I don't know that MH Ozone will be doing all this. They're probably going to do Lot 5. There'll be another developer that will work on the apartment project. But certainly there's a lot of public improvements that come involved with a project like this. The installation of 70th Street is a good example of that. And one of the things that Don and Bridget helped us with was just the allocation of the various public improvements and allocating them towards this site versus future sites. So that 70th Street, while it's coming in connection with this project, the public improvement as far as TIF will probably be allocated to a future project. Some of the site utilities and bringing utilities back in that street you'll also see here. Lastly, you know, these projects, I think it's always important to note on any TIF deals that aren't residential apartments is the other things that the TIF incentive does. And I know we have a couple other office type uses similar to what we're doing here, and it's jobs. So TIF incentivizes job creation, it incentivizes sales tax revenue for our city. So it's a great incentive that we use, and it's important to not take advantage of it, of course. But anyways, this is a good project. I think this will be great for this area. It'll be great reuse. The Ramada just kind of outlived its life, and so bring some new blood to that corner. So here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Come on forward, give your name and address, please.
My name is Therese Knepp. My address is 3316 South 68th Plaza, just 2 blocks from this location. And I'm not officially an opponent, but I am very concerned that the ongoing construction for hotels, dorms, senior citizen centers, mixed-use facilities in the Exarban area is exceeding what the roadways have been set up to handle. I love the idea, but I'm not seeing anything being addressed in terms of widening roads, adding stop signs, or changing, you know, 2-way stop signs to 4-way stop signs and so on. My drive time to and from work has increased by about 40%, and that's with where we are now, and there is current construction going on in the area and now new construction. So I just want to say, I think the planning board has to really look at the travel going on in the area. I'm all for expansion and enhancement, but I just don't think that, I don't see anything that indicates that the roads, the streets, the avenues, the plazas, et cetera, have been really thoughtfully addressed in that respect. So I just would like to bring that concern to the board. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Any other opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Brett, did you want to come up and, if you can?
Yeah. Brent Beller, 1140. I might phone a friend and maybe ask Eric or Ryan Haas to address that. You know, one of the things that, you know, it is important what Therese mentioned. which is why when we do projects like this, the reinstallation of a public street, so obviously this street is not there today, that will ease some of the congestion, and maybe the concern is at least Grover and 72nd Street, to move some of that traffic to the north. But we submit all of our plans to city staff, and we kind of defer to them as to the review of that to make sure that our traffic counts. I can't remember offhand if we had to submit a traffic study for this particular project, but oftentimes we do, and for the very reason that Therese mentioned, was to be mindful of the traffic generated by various projects in the city. So I might defer to Eric a bit more.
All right, and we may have Eric, if Eric needs Ryan, he'll call him up, so. Any comments or questions from the board? Eric?
Yeah, so specifically, the final plat previously came through planning board, and I don't know if it's quite finalized yet at city council, but there was a traffic study that was required when these 6 lots were platted. So, a traffic study is submitted by engineers that are licensed to do that type of work to our Public Works Department, who review, not only this area, but then they also take a certain scope into mind. Now, the challenge is when you have different developments and, that aren't directly related, making sure that all those pieces fit together. And we have many staff in our traffic division of Public Works that is doing their best to making sure that our street network is adequate and up to the a standard that we desire for our city. And yes, new development does bring new increased traffic and trips. So it is a balancing act. We acknowledge that. I guess I would leave it at that. If you want a more professional engineer's response, I would have to defer to Public Works.
Any comments, questions? Eric?
Regarding the TIF, the city recommends approval.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you record the vote, please?
So Longo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin. Yes. Moore.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 7-0.
Okay. Agenda item number 6, case C3-21-317. Applicant, Planning Department, on behalf of the City of Omaha, request approval of the Abbott Drive Industrial Building TIF redevelopment project plan, location 5906 Abbott Drive. And Don, you're up again.
Yes, again, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning. The Abbott Drive Industrial Building TIF project, located on a triangular parcel up near Epley Field. It's to the east of Lindbergh Drive, located between the Stores Expressway and Abbott Drive. The site, runways are over there.
Just a second, Don. You got her, Chris?
Anyway, the project involved new construction of a 150,000 square foot warehousing distribution facility. It's designed to accommodate up to 6 tenants. The project is in an ACI overlay zone. It means that the project will be required to comply with all applicable design guidelines and regulations. The building is oriented towards the north, with parking and service functions on the back, oriented towards Abbott Drive. Abbott Drive is a significant gateway into the airport and into the city in Omaha. So aesthetics are important. Screening of the service function of the building, the back of the building from public view as seen from the Stores Expressway, is required, and the applicants have prepared for us a landscaping plan along with a berm that they're looking at to accomplish this screening. There are 148 parking stalls, surface parking, being developed on the site, plus room for about 50 semi-tractor trailers that would be able to park at the southwest end of the site. The developer is F&J Enterprises, managed by Frank Krejci. Total investment in this site is about $20.9 million. They're requesting $3,875,000 in TIF support. The project is consistent with the city's master plan, We're looking at additional jobs and job creation. It's been approved, reviewed, and approved by the city TIF committee. The project complies with all requirements of the city's TIF program, and we ask for your approval.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Any other proponents?
Chairman Rosenbaum, members of the Omaha Planning Board, my name is Jim Lang. I'm an attorney at 8526 Fifth Street. I represent the applicant F&J Enterprises. The manager of F&J is Frank Creechy. With me today as well is Denny Circo of the Lund Company, who's in charge of the real estate on this particular project for Mr. Creechy, and Larry Smith of Avon Architect, who's the architect in charge as well. Just a couple comments. First of all, the cost to develop this particular site, because of the soils in the airport area, is very high, so our site improvement costs on this particular project are high. Next, the return on this particular project, being warehouse property, is only so much revenue can be generated, and with the cost of the project, the return without TIF is non-existent. With TIF, there is a return there. Thirdly, Mr. Creechy is kind of pioneering here. There's been really no type of this development in the airport area for some time, and if you kind of fly into other areas, other airports, you see a lot of industrial development around the airport. You fly into Omaha and you really don't see that, and it's kind of anemic, and hopefully this particular project will stir the development in this area. It's a 150,000 square foot state-of-the-art warehouse, 32-foot ceiling, so it's what the market, we are told, would accept. And once again, this is going to be a catalyst for other development in the area to bring area and get the airport, basically the airport area, kind of developing again. Jobs, 60 jobs during the construction project and 30 full-time jobs afterward for this particular area. So at this time, we're asking approval of the TIF for this particular project. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those, and we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Oh, okay, sorry. Additional comments, questions from the board? Eric?
City recommends approval.
Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you record the vote, please?
Rosacker.
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate.
Yes.
Solongo.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 7, case C3-21-319, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request approval of the Central Park Plaza TIF redevelopment project plan. Location 222 South 15th Street. And Bridget, you're up.
Good afternoon, Bridget Hadley, City Planning. I apologize, I did not bring my aerial map, but I do have a aerial of the actual site. So what you see here, this is Douglas Street, which is on the northern boundary of the two towers, and then in front of the towers is South 15th Street, and then Burnham Street would be the street on the southern boundary. This particular project is also now known as the Apex. I think recently, maybe in the paper, it was stated that it is also called the Apex, or now known as that. But there was a discussion earlier in the pre-planning meeting about the project, not this project, but the two twin towers, which were built in 1982 for Conagra and designed by Leo Daly, was an existing TIF project. However, it was the first TIF project is what I found out, and I'm still researching some more information, but I believe it was our very first TIF project that paid off in the 90s, not in 2015. So opposed to prior information, I don't believe this is the one that paid off in 2015. This is one that paid off in the 90s, because I believe it was our very first TIF project. So I just wanted to make that correction. Currently, there's about 27% vacancy And according to the applicant, it's because there's dated interiors, aging systems in the building, and inefficient floor plates to really attract the right office tenants to that particular building. The developer is City Ventures, and they are also a tenant in the building. What they are proposing is to reimagine and transform the Central Park Plaza, and I believe you've probably seen these renderings, but here's a rendering looking from the east at the building. So they are proposing to rehabilitate, rehab the two existing towers, as you see here, but they're also going to add a new third 80,000 square foot, approximately 16 to 17 story tower, which is this structure you see right here that will be right in between and connect the two towers. Some public improvements are still being negotiated, but will include streetscaping updates where necessary surrounding the project, new diagonal parking that will be cut in. So here is, if I move to the site plan, this is the most recent site plan. I'm not sure if the prior meeting, if we had this on the screen, but what I have highlighted in yellow is the diagonal parking that is proposed to be cut into the right-of-way, and it will not disturb the orbit route. So that's a great thing. And the reason for this parking is to support the retail that is in the building and that will be attracted to the building. The developer feels that is really critical to help support the retail on the ground floor. There are public improvements that are being discussed and negotiated along South 15th Street, and then not very many here, and more streetscaping is basically what we're talking about on the west side or on 16th Street. This here is a public parking structure. Actually, when the first TIF was approved at this site, that's what the TIF was used for. And so right now, that's being negotiated separately, not a part of this TIF project, but it will provide parking for this particular project. It is currently zoned CBD ACI 1. No zoning changes are planned. Let's see. Thought I had another picture. This redevelopment project will accomplish many goals of the city's master plan, the 2030 downtown master plan, and other general redevelopment goals of the city. It proposes, of course, to bring in multiple hundreds of office jobs, and office uses back into the downtown area. The potential, according to the developer, is to hold at least 2,000 or more than 2,000 jobs in and at this site. It will repurpose an older office building, which has experienced considerable vacancy for 10 to 15 years. And because it lacks a lot of the modern amenities, as I stated before, so it does need to be repurposed to attract the right office users into the downtown area. Our downtown has lost, and it's been said many a times, I know a lot of people have heard it, but has lost lots of jobs. 40,000 has been the number I think that's been quoted often. 40 jobs that was in the downtown area in the 60s, and since then we've lost over 20,000. So again, a project like this will be a catalyst to start bringing not only jobs back to the downtown area, but office uses down to back to the downtown area. And those office uses and those jobs will help to support density in that area. Again, we need more jobs, but it will also support residential housing opportunities. The more office users we have down here, jobs we have down here, then we can certainly provide that housing for them in the downtown area. So the two work together, and because according to the city's master plan, which I discovered years ago, and it's in the concept plan that, of course, this is the central business district, but it's also the city's center image. And so if it's the city's center image, then we certainly want to do all we can to build that image up through density of jobs and housing and all the supportive services that go with that, the various business services and products that go with that to make it a viable and thriving downtown area. The total TIF cost are just over 30 million, comprised of acquisition costs, rehabilitation, public improvements, architectural and engineering fees. We did ask for a TIF contribution to the Downtown Public Improvement Fund. That will be negotiated when the redevelopment agreement is negotiated. The total TIF investment is approximately 18 million. The total project investment is just over 104 million. The TIF project does comply with the community development law as well as the TIF program, and the committee has given its approval subject to the development team continuing to work with the city on any recommendations and requirements that the city staff has and as they continue to negotiate some of the public improvements. With that, I would turn it over. I'd ask for your approval first, but then turn it over to the development team, and I do have some other elevations I'll leave up. I'll just give you two different views.
Thank you, Bridget.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. My name is Mark Johnson. My address is 11440 West Center Road. I'm appearing today on behalf of the project owner, City Ventures, LLC. With me today is Adam Raymakers. He's the project manager for this project. As always, Ms. Hadley did a great job summarizing this project. I guess one thing I did want to clarify is that this isn't an independent standalone third tower. The idea here is this new tower, is what we're calling it, is more of a link between the two existing towers to help, among other things, fix the floor plate issues they're having with the way the building's configured today. It makes it very difficult for our multi-tenant uses to fit in with the existing floor plate. So this solves that problem. It's more of a link than it is a third tower. So I also did want to mention or say that on behalf of myself and my client, that we appreciate all of the efforts of the city staff over the last several months as we've been discussing this project to date. My client's very excited about this redevelopment project and the positive and long-lasting impact we believe it will have on the downtown Omaha area. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Comments, questions from the board?
Yeah, I've got just a couple, if I could bring Mark.
Sure.
Mark Johnson, 11440 West Center Road.
Thank you. Nice project. Certainly very supportive of trying to revitalize that area and that building particularly. It's a nice structure. Two questions. One is the occupancy is very low right now. What are you going to do? What's the plan to attract new tenants to that building? Because one of the things I do worry about, quite honestly, is the absorption of vacancy right now, and particularly in the core area, and with everything else that's going on with riverfront development and everything like that. So can you maybe address a little bit of that?
You bet. And I think it was in the city's report. I'll just highlight that. Obviously, my client's very comfortable and excited. I mean, they're a tenant in this building. They're a huge proponent of downtown Omaha. They wouldn't be investing $104 million in this project if they didn't believe in the viability of this project. I think what makes it unique is, as Bridget, Ms. Hadley indicated, there's been a large amount of projects over the last 10 to 15 years that have been converted from office to multifamily, and the other new developments that have been built have been more single tenant occupancy buildings. This is unique in that there's not many, there's a huge void in my client's view in Class A multi-tenant office space downtown, and this fills that void. So we do believe there's a huge demand for this. As far as amenities, I can ask Adam to hit on these, but it's the normal stuff that you see in these nice Class A buildings. We have, pardon me, a lounge area on the top floor, as you can see here, that will be available to all of the tenants, as well as occasionally open to the public. We'll have a fitness center, some outdoor balcony spaces to make it attractive to the tenants, some bike storage to promote the bike to work, live downtown concept.
What do you anticipate lease rates to be approximately for that Class A space down there?
As far as price,
Yeah.
you know, I don't have that
Don't remember
information.
yet. Okay. And then we were just kind of sidebarring here a little bit. One of the numbers here that we're looking at, soft cost of $15 million there as a total project cost of $104 million. That seems a little bit high for soft costs. And it's excluding architectural and engineering fees. So what is included in the $15 million in soft cost, do you know?
You know, I'll ask Adam to expound upon that. I do know that the initial budget numbers have come in a little bit higher even, so it's our job over the last, you know, or the next coming months to drill down on these numbers, but I'll ask Adam if he has any additional information on the soft costs.
Okay.
Adam Raymakers, 1413 North 182nd Street. You have a breakdown of that, sorry. Thank you. 15 million soft cost. Yeah, with this package, there are a lot of various soft costs coming into a lot of FF&E, security, building control systems that we are planning to do to upgrade the building. Outside of, you know, making it more efficient, which is, you know, what we're using the PACE funding for. There's a lot of various soft cost furniture, finishings, security systems that we are implementing into this system. I don't have an exact list, but we can provide a complete detail of all these costs if needed. I just don't have them in front of me for this. I was focusing on the TIF financing breakdown and a few other things for today's meeting. So,
Are you going to use some of the PACE money for those costs then? Is that what you're?
what's that?
Some of the PACE money that you're talking about, are you going to use that for?
No. The PACE is completely separate to make our, you know, enhancing our building's efficiencies, the skin, the clad, again, making our building more efficient with the mechanical systems, lighting systems. So we're using less energy in the long term.
Sure. Okay. All right. I'm a numbers guy, so I always like to.
Yeah. Our goal is to use less energy with a bigger building than we are right now.
Yeah. No,
So
that's good. I appreciate that, and I like the concept of the building very much.
Yep.
So don't take it negatively. I'm just trying to
No,
get my hands around the vacancy and Class A space and what's going to happen with Class A space in downtown Omaha going forward.
Yeah,
I don't even know what the vacancy rate is for Class A space in downtown. Maybe that's a question I can ask somebody, but you know, you want it to work too.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you know there's enough demand for the space down there.
I mean, I've been officing out of there for the last year and a half, and I definitely see the need for the connectivity for both towers. You know, there's inefficient spaces, there's connectivity, great views. It's going to be a very good skyline to have there. So
yeah, it's a great location for this. Yeah.
So it's, you know, right on the orbit path, which I think is going to attract a lot of people to this area. If it, you know, more than it already is. So a lot of benefits.
Okay. Thanks.
Any additional comments or questions from the board? Eric?
Yeah, Bridget had mentioned in her presentation, we continue to work with the development team regarding a few issues, the 15th Street and 16th, or 15th Street and Douglas Street improvement sides and public improvements specifically. So with that being said, city recommends approval.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you record the vote, please?
Franklin? Yes. Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Solongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, moving on, agenda item number 8, case C10-21-321, C12-21-322, applicant Mike McIntosh, Lamprey Nearson, Inc., request preliminary and final plat approval of Flynn Subdivision 1, a minor plat inside city limits with rezoning from DR and GI to GI. Property is located within the flood fringe and floodway overlay districts. Location northeast of 66th and Grover Streets. May we hear from the applicant?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Mike McIntosh. I'm a civil engineer with Lamprey Nearson, 14710 West Dodge Road. Thank you for hearing our case today. I am here representing Omni Engineering. Also in attendance today is Kyle Timmer from Omni Engineering, who can help answer any specific plant operation questions if they come up. Omni Engineering is proposing to replace an existing asphalt plant that is in operation today, just to the northeast of 66 in Grover. And I want to point out that that plant is in operation by Omni today. They want to replace that with a new state-of-the-art asphalt plant that will be operated in a similar fashion, just more modern facilities, better environmental facilities, which Kyle could explain in more detail if needed. The new asphalt plant will also help continue to meet our city's infrastructure needs. Obviously, we need asphalt in the city, and they're excited to help provide those needs for the city as well. We've coordinated this project with planning staff. We held a pre-application meeting, and we submitted for a site plan review, and we've been addressing the comments that we've received through those efforts. Omni held an open house public meeting to discuss this redevelopment on October 28th, 2021, and they've had ongoing coordination with neighbors and the Papio NRD because this is in a flood fringe and portions of it in a floodway. As part of this development, we are requesting to plat 3 unplatted lots. The current operation is on 3 unplatted lots, so we need to plat those into 1 lot and then rezone a small strip of DR zoning to GI zoning to match the majority of the site's existing zoning. And this is another important point. The red here is the existing lots, and the blue is GI zoning. You can see just right on the edge here where the floodway is, there's a little bit of DR, a strip of DR that has been recommended to rezone that to the GI to match the site. So we agree with planning staff's recommendations for approval. We'll continue to work with the city to address the stated conditions that were in the approval. We understand those. We are also on the agenda for next week's ZBA meeting to request the required waivers as part of the project that we've been working through with the city. So as I mentioned, if you have any specific plant operation questions on how this is going to operate, again, it is going to be similar to how it operates today. But Kyle will be happy to address those. So thank you, and I'd be happy to come up and answer any questions that may come up.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Any other proponents wishing to speak?
Good afternoon, Kyle Timmer, 14012 Giles Road. As Mike mentioned, I'm with Omni Engineering. I'm the general manager. What we're looking to do is update the existing operating plant there to be able to better service the market. We also are looking to improve on the processes that are there and improve on our ability to use recycled materials within it so that we can support and sustain our area longer. You know, our customers, the city of Omaha, the state of Nebraska, other developments in the area, and anybody who uses asphalt are important to us, and we want to be able to be in a place that services them the best. I'm available for any other questions, like Mike said, regarding the operations side of it.
So Kyle, it's now an asphalt plant working there. You're going to keep it an asphalt plant, but you're going to modernize.
Yep.
We've had a few letters about air quality. When you modernize your batch plant, does that improve the air quality?
Yes. Yes, it will. So with the state-of-the-art plant, what we're going to be taking is the existing plant is late 60s, early 70 vintage. And there's been significant improvements in the overall operations of asphalt plants since then. And what that will do, it takes into account improving the bag house, which is basically a big vacuum cleaner that cleans the air before it comes out. You see steam coming out of it, but that's because of the heat, not because there's particulates necessarily in that. There's other advantages that have come along with that, with how our silos work and how they encapsulate any of the fumes and anything from that standpoint. So it will significantly improve it. We would be taking an asphalt plant that can produce probably 2 to 3 times as much a year versus the existing, and actually reduce the amount of any of those pieces that are regulated through that.
Since it's going to be a little bit larger and more efficient plant. What about truck traffic? It was reported to us maybe a 10% increase. Is that accurate?
Actually, with how we're trying to do it, we would probably have more of an increase in truck traffic. We believe right now we have about 150 units a day going through that. That may double for us as we look at that because it's going to become a primary plant for our operating area. But with that, we are, we're setting it up so that we have less dust on that. We have paved surfaces around the outside where the truck traffic goes. And, we have the air quality requirements that we have to maintain. And, that's all comes through the Environmental Protection Agency, the Clean Air Act, and then it went into and is governed by the City of Omaha Public Works, which they have the air quality department that regulates that.
So do you have paved surfaces now that the trucks travel on?
A portion of it is paved right now.
But
in the future,
it will all be paved.
Where the truck traffic drives around and to our scales and load out.
Okay. Thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? I'm guessing there are some. If you want to speak, come on down, take a seat in the front. That way it'll help speed up the process. And please give us your name and address and new information for us, if you would, please. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emma Gothier. I live at 3068 South 60th Street.
What
Can
was
you
your
hear
name?
me all right?
First name again?
Emma Gothier.
Okay, thank you, Emma.
You guys may have seen some letters from me. I'm taking time off school because I think this is a priority for me. I have lived at Springtree Apartment for over 3 years now, and my partner Jared and I are looking at buying a home in the neighborhood at 6021 Frederick Street. So while we're in the process of buying a home, we heard of this and we were very concerned. The biggest concern is obviously the smell. From the information I received, I was told there would be a 2-mile radius of the smell of asphalt. My partner has pre-existing lung conditions. Studies have shown that around asphalt companies, the surrounding communities has problems with asthma and different issues. I cannot in good conscience live near an asphalt plant like that with my partner having those issues. The other concern is we use Grover Street all the time for our daily driving. The numbers that I was given was 100 trucks every 24 hours down Grover. The roads cannot handle it. We have a small community in a small area and everyone uses those roads. What are we gonna do with 100 trucks per every 24 hours going through that? And it sounds like there might even be more. So it sounds like the pollution issue might be addressed with the newer technology. So now my biggest concern is the roads. The third thing I want to bring to your guys' attention is with Maverick Landing right up the road and all the development in Exarban less than a mile away, why are we putting a more industrialized area? Shouldn't that become more residential or business? Is it really a good idea to have your industry right next to your shopping, your hotels, your bars, your brunch spots? Is that really the best use for that space? So, thank you. I think that's all of my concerns.
Thank you, Emma. Any other opponents?
Jerry Lampy, 206 Marion Avenue. I own the property at 6666 Grover Street. I'm also an air filtration specialist, and I know that this plant will emit some odors with UNO's new ballpark there. I have a feeling that's going to create some issues there. I'm concerned with polluting the water. It's an oil-based asphalt, has oil base in it. I'm afraid that water resource with Papio Creek there will get contaminated. And just on Monday, I counted 6 belly dump trucks that came down the road. Flynn Paving always just had a regular dump truck. So these belly dump trucks came down the road and hit their Jake brakes right in front of my building to vibrate my building, and I talked to my neighbor next door, which vibrated his building, and it's going to be an issue. So it's going to be a noise pollution issue, it's going to be an air pollution issue, and I'm concerned with the water contamination. Now, I am a proponent of growing businesses in Omaha, but I just don't think this is the right space and right time for this company to be there. I think they should go out someplace more industrial. This has always been considered a light industrial area, so that's all I got to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Any others?
My name is Adam George Vandeven. I live at 3024 South 60th Street, so very close to the proposed plan. Most of my issues have been addressed previously. The noise pollution is definitely an issue. I don't like to hear that there's going to be 300, potentially 200 or 300 trucks per day air braking through the neighborhood. It's not attractive. The smell, I'm thinking modern technology might be able to handle a lot of that, but I don't think they're going to be able to handle all of it unless things have changed more than I think they have. The smell is unpleasant, especially since we've actually recently experienced the untold problems that we had with air pollution from the lovely sewer plant that got put in next to Baxter Arena. Once we get into the depths of summers, it gets pleasant around there, which we, by the way, greatly appreciate. So noise pollution, air pollution are a concern. We've got the newest variant of coronavirus on its way. Probably not a wise idea to introduce an industry to a residential neighborhood that according to your website, can affect in a 2-mile radius up to 101,000 people with new pre-existing conditions that coronavirus takes advantage of. I'm pretty sure that nobody wants to kill off approximately 1 in 15 people in the Omaha area that actually live within a 2-mile radius of this area. Not the best plan in the world. Now, I'm willing to be convinced otherwise if Omni Engineering can prove that we're not going to be smelling and or breathing in horrible chemicals that are going to damage our health in a time when the worst thing you can possibly do is damage your health and then catch something else. So if they can convince me of that, I'd be willing to become a proponent at that point. If we can make sure that they're not air braking through the neighborhood, they're not backsliding down the black ice that happens on Grover Street every winter, all winter long, and they're not going to be running over us and waking us up in the wee hours of the morning 24/7. If we can actually get that noise pollution addressed, then, since I've lived all over the world and I've lived in beautiful places and places that look like a circle of hell, I don't mind living next to this plant as long as I don't smell it and I don't hear it. And if they can't do that, then I agree. They should move elsewhere and go somewhere where it's, only the average cow that actually hears and smells the smells and hears the horrible sounds. That would probably be the wise course of action rather than putting it right next to a residential neighborhood that I'm actually fond of.
Okay, we got it.
Thank you very
Adam.
much. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Deedon, 4708 Davenport Street. My family owns one of the adjoining properties, a building at 3305 South 66th Avenue Circle. Part of the plan involves a waiver to repave a road closer than the 5 feet to our property. That causes us some concern that the additional volume of heavily loaded trucks, the vibrations will affect our retaining wall, paved parking area, and our building itself, which is only about 15 feet from that proposed improved road. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Doug.
Therese Knipp, 33106 South 68th Plaza. I just want to add that the road that Grover from the 77th Street intersection to 60th Street intersection is just It just grows potholes every winter, and they're only just, repaired until the next winter. And this increase in truck traffic is going to affect that. That entire stretch would have to actually really need to be redone to be sure that it just wasn't destroyed by such intense truck traffic and the weight of the contents that are transported as well. I agree with the other things that were said as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents?
Chris Christensen, 6610 B Street. I've lived in the neighborhood for, well, my family, 110 years, so I've been there forever. My only problem with this is that we're going to take 300 trucks down a residential street. I know the other side is commercial, but we're going on a residential street. My uncle lives at 3502 South 66, and I'm speaking for 30 neighbors. He's literally 400 feet away from where the plant will be, and Omni Engineering is a 24-hour asphalt company. Flynn Paving quit at 4 o'clock. So they're going to be backup bells on their machines, backup bells on their trucks all night long. How's my uncles, how all the neighborhoods are going to sleep? Because it's going to be noisy. The plant's going to run all night. They pour asphalt for the city and the states at night. They supply the city of Omaha, state of Nebraska, Iowa, all them traffic. There's going to be a truck on our street every 5 minutes. So now we're going to put a new street on 70th for the new development where Ramada Inn is. So we're going to put that out into Grover too, because that's where it's coming. So we're going to have nothing but, right now, when we leave there in the mornings, there's already a line of trucks, 25 trucks to the intersection. So now, when Omni told me they're going to shut down their plant on Dahlman, so that means everything's going to come out of Flynn Paving, that location. So that's every truck. There will be a line of trucks from all the way from 72nd to 60th in the mornings. How are we going to get to work, or how are we going to get? We have school buses as a school stop on 63rd and Grover at the trailer court. There's 85 kids that live in that school district there. They also have a bus stop at 67th and Grover. So what happens is this truck's coming down the field, fully loaded. The average truck at 35 miles an hour would take 75 feet to stop. What kid are we going to lose before we have to do something? The street's a 2-lane road. The bridge is a 2-lane road. It cannot handle anymore. We have MUD that comes out there at 3 o'clock. They go there in the morning. There's 100 employees there. Napa, the traffic study cannot show that we can handle that traffic on that street. There's just no possible way. But that's my biggest concern with all that. But I worry about the kids. If they run out in the street, they're still a residential neighborhood. We're coming through a residential neighborhood. I don't care what's across the street. It's still, a lot of neighbors ain't gonna be able to sleep at night. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Any other opponents?
My name's Dick Teeley, 1205 Skylark Drive. I own the property at 6606 Grover Street. It's a 30,000 square foot warehouse. Our docks are on the east side of our building. Today, it is a challenge just to access those docks. I can't imagine the traffic flow with additional 200 plus trucks running daily. I share the concerns that everyone else has mentioned today. In addition to that, I ask before proceeding with the plans as they're drawn, take a look at the traffic flow again and see if does it really make sense to have outflow traffic on 66th Street versus next to the creek side. It seems like it's much wider over there and could handle that with just some redirecting of the traffic flow. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other opponents? Nobody? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Kyle or Mike, did you guys did you want to come up and address? There's quite a few concerns here. Give you the opportunity to address those. We got a lot about traffic, noise, smell, safety, water pollution. I don't know about that, but there's just there's a lot of different different things.
Yep. So our industry, Kyle Timmer, 14012 Giles Road. The asphalt industry is a heavily regulated industry. It started back with the Clean Air Act and is part of what the EPA went through. That piece of it has improved significantly from that standpoint. For any of the emissions when it comes to health concerns, different things like that, they were taken off of a major source situation back in 2002 after the EPA did further studies. There's plenty of studies as well to show that it has no health effects within anybody who lives within an area of an asphalt plant. So it was originally in 1993 put on as a potential source of, as a major contributor, and in 2002 for air pollution, HPA or HAP. When you look at it from that standpoint, the EPA did its own research and without prompting from industry took it off of that because they could find no research that supported that. So they reduced that. The emissions, et cetera, from an asphalt plant since the 1970s has reduced just about 98%, but production has increased over 250%. The technologies that are in place today have addressed most of those major concerns that are out there regarding anything to do with health, anything to do with particulate matters, VOCs, any of the different things that are studied. So when we have a permit, we have to stay within that guideline and requirements, and most of the new asphalt plants and the one that we are looking at putting in there is well below any of the limits that are set by the governing authorities. With regards to smell, those are the types of things that have also been addressed and how they seal the silos where the asphalt goes together. You know, asphalt itself is 95% aggregate, rock, sand, gravel, and 5% asphalt oil. And asphalt oil is different than most petroleum distillates. It's processed in a way that it doesn't release any of those hazardous pieces in the future. It's not like a gas station or gas or fuel, etc. And so those are important pieces when it comes to that. The truck traffic, as you look at it, that, you know, we're looking at trying and working with businesses local to that, where they're talking about 66th Street and that access. We've talked to them, tried to address concerns with regards to how our traffic flow. Because there's a turning lane as you come from 72nd down Grover and get there, we want to use part of that exit strategy off of 66 because we have the turning lane and that piece of it. When we come from 72nd, we have a two-lane bridge that comes across there, and then it's right into our entrance. So there will be concerns with that. You know, as was mentioned about night work, etc. We don't work nights all year. You know, our primary operating season is from April to November. Temperatures require us to do any night work between, say, maybe May and September because of specifications. We don't like to do night work, but the city or the state requires us to do it by their specification and the contracts that we are awarded as part of that. So that's the only reason why we do night work. Otherwise, we would be between kind of those normal operating time frames as has been in the past.
Hey, Kyle, when you say night work, does that mean you will be running April, November 24 hours? Or is there certain hours that you would be ending the day, I guess, or the night?
A typical day from us, we would potentially be starting in the 5 o'clock range with startup, filling our silos, and paving out throughout the day, servicing the customers that buy our material. If there is a job where we're required to pave at night, then that depends on what that requirement is. Sometimes we can't start paving till 9 o'clock, sometimes we can start paving at 7 o'clock, and it goes to 2 to 4 in the morning, depending on how soon we have to be off the road.
And then you said with the air pollution that it's gotten significantly better. How often are the plants inspected? So how often does the government come out and say, yep, everything looks good, or hey, there's some problems here, or is that based on neighborhood complaints? How does that happen?
No, we have reports that we have to do on an annual basis with regards to that. The city has the opportunity to come out at any time, the Air Quality Board, to address any concerns that they have. They check out our deal. When we start up a new asphalt plant, they do what is called the stack test that basically calculates and tests all the emissions that come off the plant. That is the initial baseline for what it is. We have to be within the permit requirements regarding that, and then they come up and do their annual checks on that. We do ourselves quarterly checks and more. We have monthly requirements. Goes into stormwater as well, as you talked about that. You know, we have stormwater runoff plans. We have to do sampling based on half-inch rain events or significant rain events to test water to make sure that there's no particulates that are going out as part of that.
And then finally, there's asphalt there now, correct? I mean,
Correct.
Yep. So we received a lot of correspondence where people were saying they don't want an asphalt plant there. Well, but there is one there currently,
Correct.
right?
Yep, we currently operate it.
Okay, and that runs, does that run through night hours as well?
It has not in the
'Cause you had
nearest
different
future.
locations?
We've only owned it for the last little over a year. Prior to that, it had operated. I don't know how much they operated at night for the previous owner. So I can't answer what has happened in prior history. But from our standpoint, in the year and a half or so that we've owned it, we have not operated it at night.
But you believe, though, even with a more output, that it will be safer for air?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All
Yep. The modeling on that with how the new plants are, you could model it out compared in by, you know, like I said, doubling or tripling the throughput of the plant, it will still be less air pollutants, if you want to call it that, or less things associated with that.
Okay, thank you.
I just follow up a little bit with you on that line of questioning too. So do I understand you're going to consolidate locations?
There's a potential for us to do that, yes.
Well, you're adding more truck traffic, which is, in my assumptions, makes me assume that you're going to consolidate as much of the current locations that you have into this location?
Yes.
Okay. So with that known, then, do you anticipate having extended hours at this location that you have previously been using other locations for?
That's where the night potential will come into play.
Okay.
Yep. Otherwise, the hours would be very similar.
All right. And just curious, how much does a fully loaded asphalt truck or whatever kind of trucks you bring in and out, what's the weight limit on those?
So asphalt trucks, you can have all different kinds. So we, like current.
Let's say the heaviest kind.
The heaviest truck would be probably a truck and pup, would be like 94,500 depending on their axle configuration.
Okay.
You know, no different than what it was required for any of the state highway or city street requirements when it comes to load limits.
Okay. And I believe one of your neighbors had testified that the trucks, I don't know, were the trucks enter on the west side or the east side and exit on the east side or the west side of your property?
I don't know if you have.
There it is.
Okay. See if I can. So right now we would look to have ingress coming in on the east side of the property, coming in and around. They would get loaded under the silo, and then they would exit through the west side.
Kyle, when you get out onto Grover, does everybody do you enter from 60th Street and go out 72nd, or you come, or is it just, they just go whichever way?
It would go whichever way makes the most sense for the customers who are taking it or where the jobs are at. Most of the material transport coming into the site would come in most likely off of 72nd.
That's a steep hill coming down,
Yep,
isn't
it
it?
would come-
Where you hear the Jake brakes.
And this is the area where we have the center turn lane. That's part of what the road is.
I'm gonna call, Ryan, when you have time here, or I guess, not when you have time, I'm gonna call you. One last thing, Kyle, did you, and if you said this and I missed it, I apologize. Did you call a meeting with anybody in the area, public meeting, to
Yes.
discuss this?
Yep. On October 28th, we had notified anybody within the 300-foot, I believe that's the right criteria, notified all the neighborhoods or people that own property within that area, had an open house on site, showed them what this plan was and what we were thinking that we would be doing.
How many people showed up to that?
I believe we had 8 or 10 at the most.
Okay, thank you. Ryan, would you come up, please? Ryan, one of the biggest concerns is the truck traffic going from, I believe you said about 100 trucks to 200 trucks, going to double. Has there been any traffic study, or what, if there hasn't been a traffic study, what is your opinion of the increase in trucks on this Grover Street?
Yeah, Ryan Haas with the Public Works Department. We, in analyzing the proposed site, any given site, the threshold for requiring a traffic study is 100 peak hour trips. So certainly trucks have a bigger impact on traffic generally, but it was so far below the threshold, you know, when we're talking about traffic capacity, that we didn't feel that it was necessary to require a traffic impact study.
Ryan, with Maverick Landing and 70th Street now being built, and it looks like there's going to be apartments there as well, would that need to be taken into consideration with the increased amount of trucks and the increased amount of traffic that's going to be coming from the hotel and the apartments at some point, or?
You know, I don't think we were aware of this project on this case when we reviewed the traffic study for Maverick Landing. But again, you know, when we're talking about 100 trips spread out over the course of an entire day, I mean, that's really negligible when you start to talk about the volumes that we see at 72nd and Grover that went into that capacity analysis, where there's thousands of vehicles in those peak hours. So it's not to say that there's not going to be an impact if there's a marginal increase of trucks, but it washes out so much over the course of the peak hours relative to the other.
I guess if it was 100 Volkswagens that were going through, you know, that I would say, yeah, it's not a lot of traffic, but with 100 more trucks or so, does that? Are
we talking about 100 trucks? My understanding was 100 trucks per day was the increase, correct?
No, I thought he said today that it was going to be 200 or 250 to 300 a day.
Ryan said that was the increase, was the 100 trucks. From 100, you understood 100 more.
Right, per day. You know, and again, with the threshold for a traffic study is 100 trips per peak in the peak hour.
Right.
That's the very beginning of when we were required. So.
Therese mentioned the condition of Grover Street. I have not been out there to look at it. What's the condition of that street?
Horrible.
Sir, I'm sorry, public hearing has been closed.
As it happens, my daughter's dance class is on Grover Street, so I see that every week. It's not ideal. I mean, there's potholes here and there. Nothing that I've seen to the extent that I would call in, but that I've only been going there for a few months, so. You know, anytime there's a pothole, especially the bad ones, certainly we encourage people to report those either through the city's website or by calling Street Maintenance Division so that they can come out and address those.
Do you know if Grover Street is planned to be repaved as part of the big bond that was approved for all the streets?
I'm not aware of whether or not it's on that list. I don't think it would be widened, no. I know Grover Street further east is on the list from, and that's coming up next year, but that's east of 60th Street. I don't believe that this one is part of the scope of that project.
Is there any way that it would get on your radar considering the increase in traffic that we're going to see from Maverick Landing? Is it something that can be put into consideration for the future?
As far as the capacity improvement, these two projects would not push it over where it would need to be more than the 3-lane section that it is today.
How about from a safety impact perspective?
Well, safety is always important, and if they're complying with the driveway regulations, which to my knowledge they are, as far as sharing the one access, and then I don't know. I'm not aware of safety concerns on this particular segment, like specific safety concerns, but always, traffic safety is important, but if they're following the regulations and meeting the thresholds, then that's typically something the city would support the approval of.
Because there's no lights at any of the ingress or egress points here, is there?
Okay. Any other questions for Ryan? Thank you, Ryan.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
I do have one more question about the braking. Is there anything that can be done, and either of you can answer this, to regulate the amount that the trucks are J-braking, which obviously I think is the majority of the noise pollution concerns?
Kyle, maybe you.
From that standpoint, I know that
Sorry, give your name and address again.
Kyle Timmer, 14012 Giles Road. From a noise ordinance perspective, I'm not privy or that knowledgeable about trucking and what that is, but ordinances that have lack of or reduced jake braking or no jake braking allowed, as you look at that, would be ways to control that. Again, it comes down to individual operators that go through that. I know, our trucks, we have the ability to have jake brakes, but I know if they're in residential areas, stuff like that, we tend not to use them because of the situations that it creates.
Where are your other locations?
We would be on G Street. Trying to think of what the address is. Right off of Highway 75 down by U.S. Cold Storage, F Street.
Okay.
In there, and then 14012 Giles Road.
1401 Giles Road. So give me what's
140, just east of 144th on Giles.
Okay, Watkins Concrete area.
Yep.
Okay, that's industrial area out there as well.
We are in industrial, right next to a residential.
Yeah, right next to a residential there too. You know where I was going with that then.
Okay.
Are the trucks your own equipment, and are the drivers your employees, or is that all contract?
It's a combination. And we have customers that come in and pick up asphalt and do their own work. So, we organize our own material hauls in, et cetera, to be able to supply the plant. We haul asphalt out to our paving crews, et cetera, but we also have customers that come in and pick up.
Is that it? Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no additional comments, questions, we'll go to Eric. Eric?
Yes. So this is, it's a lot of good dialogue and conversations about the operations of the facility. The challenging part is what is before us today on our agenda, and that is a plat and a zoning consolidation into one district. The majority of the site, as Mike had pointed out, is general industrial. There's a small sliver on the east side that is DR, which is what the creek is zoned DR as well. The vast majority of the area north of Grover Street is zoned industrial. The future land use map does call for industrial. So before us today is not the specific operations of the facility. There's not a use permit, there's not a PUR or PUD. It's the plat. And really why that's come forward is because they want to tear down the facility and rebuild. Okay, so obviously it needs to be a platted lot when that happens, and the zoning needs to be of one base district. It was mentioned there are the case is also on the Zoning Board of Appeals next week. which does get into some of those operating characteristics of the use. But before us today is, is the platting into one lot and the zoning consolidation. So really, the role of the planning board is that compliant with the codes and regulations in the master plan, which it is. So, I know it's hard to separate the two because, without the use, we're not here today for the zoning and the platting. So I'm not trying to push everything aside. I just want to keep it in the scope of what the board's role is today as we make a recommendation and a vote. I think most, Kyle and Mike talked a lot about the operations and the permitting that is required with the improvements of the new facilities. There are a lot more provisions that are applicable and come into place. Of course, they have to do their licensing as it is currently right now. I don't know if I have anything else to add unless there's any specific questions. So I'll make the recommendation. If we want to continue dialogue or questions, we definitely can do so. The city recommends approval of the rezoning from DR and GI to GI, approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 5 conditions in the report, approval of the final plat subject to the conditions of the approved preliminary plat, and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement if necessary prior to city council.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the rezoning from DR and GI to GI. Approval of preliminary plat subject to the 5 conditions in the staff report, and approval of the final plat subject to the conditions of the approved preliminary plat, and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement if necessary prior to forwarding to city council for final action.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you record the vote, please?
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Moving on, agenda item number 9. It was on consent, was taken off. It's agenda case number C10-16-287, C12-21-337. Applicant Jasper Stone, 192nd and Dodge LLC, request preliminary and final plat approval of Avenue 1 replat 2, a minor plat inside city limits with rezoning from AG, DR, and MU to DR and MU, along with approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Avenue 1. Portions of the property are located within an ACI 4 overlay district. Location southeast of 188 and Burke Street. Is the applicant here? You are.
Kyle Hazy with E&A Consulting Group, 10909 Mill Valley Road, representing the applicant, along with myself. The applicant is in the audience as well. This, as you know, is part of the overall mixed-use plan for Avenue 1 mixed-use development. The reason we pulled this off of the consent agenda, and Eric, maybe help me if I'm wrong on this. There was one comment within the recommendation report that states the proposed 2 access points on Lot 4 do not comply with Section 55 930 B8. And this is not appropriate given the size of the lot. Remove one of the approaches to Lot 4. If necessary, also remove the southern parking lot from the plans and pursue options for on-street parking to provide additional parking options for the development. The reason that we have concern with this is currently on that lot we show 18 units. We are trying to provide homes that front onto the street, which provides kind of a required loop system with these roads. If we took away one of those access points, our concerns is that from a fire access for fire safety to get back there, and they would have a hard time backing out if needed to without the loop. And then on the weekly basis, any trash pickup, they would not be able to reach certain points within this development without having to back up, and they're limited on the room and the amount of distance that they are able to back up. On the original approved plan that we had from the mixed use, as shown here, we had residential units that faced onto Harney Street. With this proposed layout, we had 23 curb cuts along Harney Street. With our new site plan, we are reducing that to 5. 2 for the church, 1 for one residential lot, and then 2 on the larger lot 4. We will continue to work with staff to get a site plan that they and the client are comfortable with, but we want to just address that 2 access points on lot 4 if possible.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Kyle. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing. Questions?
So I understand the point that you're making. I guess what I would propose is we can continue to have that conversation with Paul and the fire department to see if they have concerns about only having 1 access. If you had to have 1, would you most likely have the northern access, or do you know, or not sure at this time?
I'm not sure at this point.
Okay. Well, what I would propose is we would keep our recommendation the same at this point. We can continue conversations with the applicant as well as the fire department, and if there is concerns, I mean, I know this comes up with, typically it's PUR projects, and we have individual platted lots, and so I guess relating that, it, you know, kind of makes sense, but that's what I would propose. I don't know if the board is comfortable to that.
Would we see this case again, or would this be our only opportunity for the?
Well, I guess that's what I'm asking, you know, what the board is comfortable with. If you think it's necessary to lay over, you know, I'm not willing to sit here and say, yeah, you can have the second access point as we sit here. So I would say that staff is comfortable with our recommendation, but continuing that dialogue. But if the planning board wants to make sure they know what it sees fit and the access points, then it probably needs to be laid over.
Right. I'll leave that up to.
Would you guys be okay with that layover?
Give me a second here. Would you be comfortable with the layover to next month to further address this with planning staff?
I'd say probably not.
No.
I'd say it's best to keep the church moving.
Okay.
So, and I can briefly address that.
If you want.
Yeah. Jeff Hofer, 14964 Farnham Circle. I represent Jasperstone Partners and Avenue 1, the overall project. And the primary driving project here is really the church. We are really looking forward to having a nonprofit as part of the Avenue 1 community and just the benefits that brings. And given the size of the church lot, there was this remainder of a parcel on the east end that we definitely think that townhomes are a great fit there. And so we don't want to slow down the townhome project. And so the original request was to keep both access points on the north and the south because of what was originally approved in the mixed use agreement. However, we are comfortable with a conditional approval where we can coordinate with the planning department to, try to get from our end, hopefully coordinate and be able to get both access points and go from there. So we're okay with the conditional approval.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't see on the recommendations anything saying that you can't have that.
So it's laid out in the recommendation report. We don't itemize usually with the mixed use plan. It's all encompassing as stated by providing acceptable final mixed use development plans prior to city council. It's just the way that the wording is done with the mixed use development agreement, but it is a comment in the recommendation report that we factor in. So.
Well, but it's conditional that is resolved, so it seems to me like that meets it without any further editorial comment, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you leave the recommendation as is. It covers it, yeah.
Jeff is already committed to continuing to work with the planning department, so.
I mean, it's addressing your concern about laying over, it just seems to me like we've got enough here to address this and come to an agreement with how we want to do this without delaying the
Yeah, no,
process.
I'm fine. I'm not suggesting late, or I just wanted to make sure that the applicant was comfortable with it as well. And as long as the dialogue's gonna remain open, I'm fine.
Yeah, Jeff has committed to that.
Yeah, and you know, the safest way is they meet a compliant plan, and if there's disagreement about the access points, you know, we can always move it forward with a compliant plan to get the church going, and then we, you know, bring this back separately, you know, kind of isolated. So I don't think I have any more comments to make, so
Okay.
I don't know. We didn't call. Did we call opponents? Okay.
We didn't? I'll go again.
Yeah, we did. Nobody
Did we?
Nobody came.
Yeah, I don't think anybody answered.
Nobody did.
I'll go again. Any opponents? Seeing none, close public hearing, just to make sure it's on the record.
Okay, sorry, maybe
All
you
right.
did. Well, I'll make a recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG, DR, and MU to DR and MU. Approval of the major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement, subject to providing acceptable final plans prior to forwarding to City Council. Approval of the preliminary plat, subject to the 5 conditions in the report. Approval of the final plat, subject to preliminary plat approval and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to council.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move approval of the rezoning from AG, DR, and MU to DR and MU. Approval of the major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Avenue 1, subject to providing acceptable final mixed-use development plans prior to forwarding this request to City Council. And approval of the preliminary plat, subject to the 5 conditions outlined in the recommendation report. And approval of the final plat, subject to the conditions of preliminary plat approval and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to forwarding the request to City Council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, would you please record the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, agenda item number 17, case C10-21-332, C10-21-333, C11-21-334. Applicant Chris Pomerlau. It is on, request is rezoning from R8 to TOD 2MX with approval of a planned unit redevelopment overlay district, along with repeal of the area of civic importance overlay district. Location southeast of 38th Avenue and Dodge Street. Is the applicant here?
Andrew Conzit, 901 Jones Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68102. I'm an architect with BVH Architecture working on behalf of the ownership group for this project. I'm joined here along with myself and colleague architect by the owners and developers, so perhaps there will be questions more appropriate for them, and they're glad to step up and answer those if need be. I simply wanted to say that as part of our submittal process with the city, we've received the PUR feedback comments, and we look forward to taking I think there were maybe 5 or 6 kind of key conditions that they asked for us to look at and improve the design with. We look forward to continuing that conversation and meeting those. So we'll be doing that over the next several weeks and working towards those improvements that the city has mentioned in their feedback comments. With that said, that's kind of my short statement. I don't intend to necessarily re-present the project. There was pretty thorough presentation at the last meeting, so happy to answer any questions about the design specifically, and then again, the owners are here as well.
Thank you, Andrew. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Come on down, give your name and address, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Alexandra Goswami. I live at 427 North 41st Street. Actually, go by Alex if you want to put that down. Alex, you're welcome. I want to see if I can put my phone on this. I haven't tried that before. Not really. Can I pull something up on here?
Can you?
Can I pull some? It'll show the
Yeah.
screen.
Uh-huh.
Put the screen up on
Cool. Okay. I'm just going to the planning board's website.
Do you have an image? If you just do screen up, it'll show it.
It will.
Just do up. Yep, and we can zoom in. Just, you got it.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah. Oh, there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Cool. And this is my new phone case. All right.
You got touch the screen, keep it active though.
Thank you.
There you go.
There it is.
Technology. Okay. Well, good afternoon. So I am an opponent of this project. I came to the planning board meeting a couple weeks ago before Thanksgiving. And I will remind you that I served on the TOD Stakeholders Committee for the year that that group was convened. So I'm very interested in seeing transit-oriented development happen on Dodge Street Corridor and surrounding areas. And I'm well aware that that was what needs to happen in order for there to be density on that area to make the orbit bus and all of the transit investments that the city has done successful. But I'm going to quote you back to you, Eric. You said the planning board's role earlier today is to determine if the agenda item, I'm paraphrasing, complies with the rules and regulations of the planning department. And I don't think this one does, because the proposal here is rezoning from R8 to TOD2MX. And that's why I have this map up here. This area is not, according to the TOD plan, zoned for TOD-MX. It is, in fact, zoned for TOD-MUR. So you can see here, TOD2MX is the pink, we'll say, the darker of the two pinks, and then brown is TOD2-MUR. So if you go over here, forgive me, I'm trying to make this work. That's Dodge Street, that's 38th Avenue, and that's brown, which is TOD-MUR, which is smaller scale and more convenient and more compliant with what the neighborhood context is. And so here, again, I'm getting this from the planning board's website, the TOD executive summary, I think. No, it's the TOD zoning summary and guide. That's what it is. And then so you have here again from your own materials, the district location and calibration standards. And I'll just read this to you because everybody loves having text read back to them at a planning board meeting, I'm sure. But the determination of where TOD districts occur is commonly called calibration. And I'll skip ahead to two things that I think are relevant here according to the following variables for calibration. One is the neighborhood survey, which is a public engagement process yielded neighborhood preference data for building heights through the tier mapping exercise. This data was referenced when determining building size limits. And so since this one is larger than the building size limits, and that information was determined by a neighborhood survey, which is really valued in your own documents here on the zoning guide, then I would invite you all to revisit that. If you're trying to rezone for something other than what's in the TOD guidance, then hold another neighborhood survey. At least give the neighborhood the opportunity for feedback. Of course, one could say that the invitations within a 300-foot radius or whatever the regulations are, of the proposed development, invite people to these kinds of things. That's not done by the city itself. The city and the planning department are very reliable to get appropriate neighborhood feedback because there's the effort taken to, for example, have these meetings at times that are convenient for the public, like in the evenings, somewhere located in their neighborhood, and you all can hear this information from the neighborhood survey firsthand as to whether or not they want this particular property, this historic district, to be rezoned as no longer historic and rezoned for something that is larger than what the TOD says. TOD that was approved by the neighborhood. So the developers could certainly hold those kind of surveys. However, hearing it yourself is definitely much more valuable. And the second criteria that I think is relevant here for the district location and calibration, according to your TOD summary map, is the preservation of residential neighborhoods. This one is particularly relevant. As we know, these properties on 38th Avenue and Dodge are part of the Gold Coast Historic District. And of course, Skylark Development has said that not these particular properties are listed. However, it does they are encapsulated in the broader historic neighborhood. And historic neighborhoods are referenced specifically here, which says that historic neighborhoods that include uniform large lot detached single-family residences, et cetera, will be excluded from the TOD district as new smaller lot and attached housing types could be considered incompatible. So I think that according to your own guidance, and I know, and that's something that I do respect about the planning board and the planning department in particular, is you try to take narrow views of these agenda items instead of sort of extrapolating beyond what your own rules and regulations say. I think in these two particular instances, they are not compliant with the TOD zoning summary guide and what was laid out for development along the Dodge Street corridor for Orbit to be successful and for greater density to happen in that area. Not to mention the problems with affordable housing, which I'm sure someone else will cover later on. Thanks.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Alex. Any other opponents wishing to speak?
My name is Alex O'Hanlon, 3010 Lincoln Boulevard. I'm with the Alliance of Alexes. I wholeheartedly support everything that Alex just said. I think she did a wonderful job. Since today we're talking about zoning, I want to talk a little bit about TOD as well, and how we can use that as a tool for affordable housing as well as increasing density, but how I don't think that this development as proposed does that. Now, the last Alex really encouraged you all to take the narrow view, and I think she gave you a lot of great points, but I also want to encourage you all to use your position of power that you're in right now and use that to not only take the narrow view, but make decisions that are going to affect the city on a greater level. So firstly, I want to talk about affordability. So when we talk about zoning for TOD, I talked about this last time. I really think it's important that when zoning for TOD, we have affordable houses included. We have affordable units included. I know that this development has said that they're going to include 10 affordable units, but as we went over last time, they are going to be taking away 21, so that leaves us with a deficit of 11 affordable units. Furthermore, the units that they'll be putting in will not be as affordable as the units that they'll be taking away. So really that leaves us with a deficit of 21 affordable units. And then also the fact that this is supposed to be like workforce housing for UNMC. I think a lot of times when folks say this, I don't know exactly who they're hoping at UNMC is going to be in this workforce housing. The majority of people who work at UNMC are not high-income earners. These units are being priced for middle to high-income earners. So this is not going to produce the types of homes that we need for the types of folks that we're claiming to want to build these homes for. Nextly, I want to talk about density. I don't think that this development is, while it will encourage density, it's not going to use that density to encourage greater use of public transportation. And then again, to hit back on the affordability, I've probably said this in front of y'all at least 6 times, but affordable housing is not affordable if it's not on public transit routes. And again, the Sherwood Foundation's most recent study on where affordable housing should be located highlights this exact area. So we can't be having a deficit of 21 affordable houses on this area where we need to have more. And then I also want to talk about our climate action plan. I think it's really important that if we're going to, that we wait for our climate action plan to come into place for guidance before we tear down any more historic buildings, before we tear down any more buildings, because when we do that, we have extra emissions. We have the emissions of the demolition as well as the emissions of the build. So I think we need to take that into account, and I also think that it's a really dangerous precedent to set to be tearing down affordable units to put up less affordable units. And I also think that that's something that needs to, I think that needs to be calculated as well. I think my greatest fear is that this sets a very scary precedent, not only of ruining neighborhood character, but of displacement, and not of a displacement that is accidental or tangential, but a direct displacement. And I guess I'm saying this as somebody that, like, I am pro-development. I think about like when all the skyscrapers and apartment buildings were going up in New York in the beginning of the 20th century. What if people came up and tried to stop every single development? That wouldn't be good. When people are moving to a place, we need safe, affordable places for them to live. So I'm very pro-development. But I really want that development to be good, and I really want the most vulnerable people in our population to be centered every time we come to this table to discuss what our city should look like and how we want to spend that money. I'm on my tiptoes right now. I can barely see above. Sorry, but I really do want to, let me get back to that serious point. I really want to make sure that this isn't, something that we just talk about for a second and then we pass by. Like, how long was that conversation that we had about the asphalt plant? Like, can we please have conversations that are that long about these types of developments? I think that another thing that I worry about when we are going to be tearing down these types of units to put up the sort of development that Skylark wants to put up is that I really think that Omaha has a lot going for it. But I think that a lot of times when we let these types of developments happen, we push away the best things that we currently have going for us. Putting up this development is not going to make Omaha unique. I don't know if the point of the character of this development to be a part of the character of the neighborhood is like the character of the Taco Bell, but it's taking down the unique character of the neighborhood that we do currently have. And I think, and it's also taking down the affordable rents that we have here. And it also, those sorts of things make people feel disengaged. There was 15 people here to speak last time. This time there's 2. So that disengagement doesn't just lead to less engagement in the civic process, it also leads to people not wanting to live here. And then they move. And then this development that we put up to try to attract talented young people has actually caused talented young people to move out of this city. I think, yeah, lastly, I just want to hit on the point that I understand that the planning board is supposed to decide whether or not something is in line with code, but the planning department makes a recommendation ahead of time. So I think that's the time where we should decide whether or not something's aligned with code.
Alex, you understand that we get projects in that some are affordable housing and some are not, and that when the projects come in, we can't say, I mean, I understand what you're saying and what the other Alliance of Alex is saying as well, but we can't just say, no, we're not going to support a project because it doesn't have all of the affordable housing that we're trying to make up, according to Sherwood, 80,000 units. So in the middle of like a project for to say, oh, don't build it because it's not affordable, that's kind of out of our hands. What you need to be doing with your people is trying to find developers that will come up with projects that will bring them to us. We don't change the development. We vote on the development as it's presented to us, not come up with solutions on where they should move buildings or where they should build a new housing. It comes through the department, comes to us, and then we vote on it. So it starts with developers that, we need to figure out a way to have them come forward so that they can make money and still make affordable housing. So I hope you understand. We sympathize with the situation of the citizens of Omaha that can't afford housing, but at the same token, we also have to vote on projects that are presented to us. But it's not on deaf ears. I hope you understand my point as well.
I do understand your point. And I accept your invitation. I would love to get together with you and the planning director and Eric England and talk about how we can create a task force that is going to meet with developers when they first come to the city and propose a project and say, hey, we really like what you're doing, but how about you come back to us and you include 20% of this to be affordable housing? How about you don't buy these 3 units for a price of $1.2 million, but rather you go to this empty lot a block and a half away, buy it for $500,000 and put up a unit with put up a development with 20% affordable units. So I would love to leave my email address with you all, and I would love to create that task force and work with developers at the very beginning. And at that same point, I think to the last Alex's point, last but not least, of course, I think that would be really important to have neighborhood engagement also at that point, because this feels too late. So thank you so much for bringing that up. I'll leave my email at the front, and hopefully we can move forward from there. Thanks for your time
Thank you,
today.
Alex. Any other opponents? Seeing none? Alex, okay, I thought you were coming back to say something.
Sure, yeah.
Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Additional comments, questions from the board?
2MX to the MUR that she had brought up.
So the master plan designates any area for TOD as TOD, transit-oriented development. What first Alex showed was the TOD sub-district map, which there was a lot of conversations, a lot of communication with neighborhoods in developing our codes and regulations for TOD. That specific map was not strictly adopted, okay? But we're transparent with it, you know, both to the planning board and to the city council of approval, that it is our best intentions to try to follow that map the best that we can, okay? But we use it as a guide. We can't predict every project that comes forward in all the different areas. So this area is shown on the sub-district guidance map as TOD to MUR. We are recommending TOD to MX, and the only reason for that is to allow the small office and commercial portion in the building to be there with the MX. We felt that its location on Dodge, we've heard it from other developments along Dodge. They wanted more office commercial when it was just strictly multifamily residential. I know we've had those conversations at this meeting before. So we felt it was important to allow that small amount of office and commercial space, which is a very small component of the project, but we felt it was important, and we feel that the recommendation to the TOD 2MX was the appropriate recommendation. So we don't view that as, well, basically it's TOD in the master plan. We view it as being master plan compliant. The second part of that.
Can I stop you for a
Yeah,
second?
you can.
I forgot to give, Andrew, did you want to come up and address anything?
Just really quickly.
Okay.
Andrew Conzit, 901 Jones Street. Just to tag on to that, I looked it up while you were mentioning that. TOD2 MX or MUR, they're both TOD2 designations, and I looked that up. They both have the same height allowances. And so there was a comment previously that this building was too tall for that currently designated TOD2 zoning, and I don't think that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, so I would agree the height doesn't change between the two. The second part was exclusion of certain neighborhoods. So going back into the TOD adoption, there were certain neighborhoods that consisted of consistent low-density residential zoning that were in historic districts that we excluded from being in TOD. Fair Acres is one. There's other segments further west. I can't think of them all, but there were certain neighborhoods that were excluded from TOD just to preserve that low-density residential historic character of those neighborhoods. This was not one of them. If you look at the zoning map, there are all sorts of different zoning designations, office, commercial, high-density residential, and it did not fit into that criteria. So I just wanted to mention that. Regarding affordable housing, obviously this is a consistent theme that comes up with every month pretty much here at Planning Board and nearly every week at City Council. Obviously, providing affordable units is very important. We have a need in this community. There are continued conversations. City staff is in the process of hiring a consultant to assist in the Affordable Housing Action Plan that is due to the state legislature by the end of 2022. So we would encourage Alex to be a part of those community meetings and whatever groups. We haven't formalized, what the exact procedure is. We're working on those with the consultant. But there will be a lot of opportunity for public feedback, public input of what we should do as a city in looking at the need for affordable housing. So Jeff, you made some good points. Obviously, it's difficult sometimes project to project, and, we get certain TIF cases that are all affordable units. We have other TIF cases that are, or TIF projects that are all market rate. So just, continuing to look at policies and regulations of the city, I think is important, but just pigeonholing each development, saying certain percentage, needs to be affordable. There's no criteria in place or regulations for that to happen. So I did want to point out these structures could be torn down today. I know it was mentioned more discussion last month at the TIF public hearing. These are contributing buildings to a historic district, but there is no protection on the buildings. If the owner wanted to tear these down today, and I'm not saying they would, but if they wanted to, just say, sorry, residents, you have to find somewhere else. I'm, tearing these homes down. I mean, they have that right as a property owner. So they went on the record and saying they were working with their tenants to find other units in the area, and we definitely encourage that. But I'm not here to go back and just report on the TIF case from last month. This is specifically the rezoning and the PUR. There's a few modifications with the PUR plan. Andrew had mentioned that development team is looking forward to coordinating with us on finalizing those plans before it proceeds to City Council. Unless you have any other questions or want to have continued dialogue, I will make the recommendation of the city to approve the rezoning from R8 to TOD2MX, approval of the repeal of the ACI overlay district, approval of the PUR overlay district, subject to submittal of acceptable final plans prior to City Council.
Any further discussion, comments? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the rezoning from R8 to TOD2MX, approval of the repeal of the ACI Area of Civic Importance Overlay District, approval of the PUR Planned Unit Redevelopment Overlay District, subject to submittal of acceptable final plans prior to forwarding to City Council.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you record the vote, please?
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Moore? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
There's a few people that are still here. We have one more case. We skipped over case 18. I hope no one's here that was here for 18. We moved it up, I'm sorry. We moved it up to the beginning. Okay, we're going to continue on. Agenda item number 21, case C8-21-233, applicant Eugene Olson, Westwood Solutions, LLC, request approval of a major amendment to the large project special use permit to allow communication services in the GI district, location northwest of State Street and Blair High Road. Kevin, are you representing the applicant?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Kevin Anderson, Mayor's Office here representing the applicant.
Okay. I pulled it off a consent. I was concerned about the going from just speaking on this request, going from a 60-foot boundary to a 0 boundary because of what might happen in the future with the AG. Even though on the master plan, they are slated to be industrial GI areas, but I don't feel good about that, passing that. So that's why I wanted to pull it off. I wanted to talk about it. Haven't felt good the whole process, but especially we'll just keep it just to this request here. What is their problem with maintaining that 60-foot boundary? Do they plan on building all the way out to the edge of the property?
In instances, yes, and I'll circle back because you're right in the sense that we do have some things in the works. So the intent here is to, because our buffer and buffer yard and landscaping requirements are largely tied to adjacent zoning, because the predominant adjacent zoning in this area and where they're looking for that waiver is ag and yet industrial and future land use. the ask is to kind of tie it to a presumed industrial type of waiver, or tie the buffering requirements as if those adjacent properties were zoned industrial. I'd say based off of the landscaping plan submitted or requested to support the waiver, the majority of that change or delta is based off of the northern and eastern property lines, where we do have a plat in process, but not obviously yet final platted or recorded or approved. But again, narrow scope of the planning board absolutely represent that. So the intent, yes, is to tie, or at least seek waiver to tie the buffer yard landscaping requirements as if they were those presumed industrial zoning. But to your question, it is to maximize building area, and there are a couple instances where there's some encroachment of stormwater detention especially, but also kind of lay down yards and equipment yards, their ability to utilize those to the maximum extent. And as you all know, this is a massive site and a massive investment into that site. So the overall scope gets a little overwhelming in the sense of what the requirements are. So the intent is to maximize the buildable or usable area for those purposes, but also, and it's recognized, kind of minimize the very significant investment that is for those landscaping requirements for such a large site.
Those surrounding areas being AG and projected to be GI down the road, we have amended the master plan in past years. Not very often, but we have made amendments to it for certain cases. If that would happen with this, now we've got a development facility right up to the border, to the boundary, which could affect the amended. I mean, that's a lot of ifs, but that could happen. The other thing that bothers me is the lack of trees. By going up to a zero border, the lack of, we're going to miss out on tree plantings with that also. Is there any way to maintain the tree plantings that would be there if you went from a 60-foot boundary to a zero boundary?
I'd imagine so. I don't want to speak out of turn on behalf of the applicant, and I'll be the first to kind of blame that I kind of gave them the stand down a little bit, seeing this was on consent. I would imagine so and believe so, to the extent that a motion and approval can be based on that. I'll yield to staff, but I would think that a buffer yard requirement could kind of be independent of any landscaping requirements, and those requirements could be made up elsewhere on the site.
Okay, just circling around with the buffer yard, to go from 60 to 0, is there anything in between that would work for the applicant?
To be honest, I'd be hesitant to answer to that right at the moment. So.
Well, and if I could jump in real quick,
Sure.
There are tree plantings on all four sides.
But we're gonna lose a substantial amount of trees. Go ahead.
As the plan shown in your packet, those plantings would be planted. Those are street yard landscaping trees that would still be provided. So the exhibit in your packet, there's a total of 462 trees around the perimeter of the site. Okay, so on the southern edge, adjacent to future residential, that 60-yard buffer yard is reduced to 30 feet because of State Street and being a major street. So the number of trees for a 30-foot buffer yard are provided on that south side. On the west, north, and east sides, there is still a certain number of street yard tree plantings. Now, the street yard tree plantings, it's not as large of an area as what a buffer yard typically is. So there's less trees by nature, but there are still 462 trees that we're looking at on the perimeter of the
Yeah,
site.
I was just reading off of our packet where it says, which also reduces the number of required tree plantings within these areas. So we're going to reduce the number of trees.
If you don't waive the 60-foot buffer yard, there would be substantially hundreds of more trees that would be required.
Yeah, okay. Got it. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other proponents wishing to speak? Any opponents? Seeing none, close public hearing. Any additional comments, questions from the board?
Just that I appreciate your comments on that, Chairman, because they're very good concerns, I think. You raised some very good concerns and valid concerns, and we don't want to take every project just at its face value.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, comments? Eric?
Yeah, and I probably didn't mention in the pre-meeting, just to echo of what Kevin had said, the area to the north and to the east is in the stages of a plat with industrial zoning. So then you also do have a segment on the southwest, which is a future phase of the R&L carriers. So that little gap that's ag between the GI, that is also been approved as a preliminary plat for industrial zoning. So really you're talking about the far western edge. To the west of that, we have not seen a plat with any zoning requests or anything like that. We have done this with more recent. There was a project with the Avenue 1 that was going to have mixed-use zoning. Well, there's been a few over in 192nd Street on both sides, on the east and west side, that based on the future mixed-use zoning or other zoning that we knew was accounted for, that we had supported waivers. So staff is comfortable. I understand your position. It is a large site. There are still a lot of trees that are being planted. We are comfortable, though, based on the future land use map in this area of supporting the reduction as discussed in the report. So I'll read the recommendation. We can have further question and answer or conversations if you'd like. Staff recommends approval of the major amendment to the large project special use permit, subject to the 3 conditions in the recommendation report.
Thank you, Eric. Just my last comment, I guess part of the reason, Kevin, the process has irritated me. We're on this, this is the request, I'm staying on that, just to get off for this one comment, that it's irritated me. Just for the record. So, all right, do we have any other comments, questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion for approval of major amendment to large project special use permit, subject to 3 conditions in the recommendation.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you record the vote, please?
Franklin? Yes. Moore? Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
I think that was it. Do we have a motion on last month's pre-meeting minutes and public minutes?
Move to approve the pre-meeting and public meeting minutes from the month of November.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you record the vote?
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Morris?
Yes.
Moore? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion adjourned.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Okay. Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Morris?
Yes.
Moore? Pate? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Hey.